Okay, so I'm Mark Costers. I head up engineering. And one of the things I just want to say through this is I'm really excited about a lot of the efforts that's gone on with engineering is being seen by the community now. And we're seeing a lot of focus on route security, whether it be IRR work that John Sweeting's talked about or RPKI work, which I'm going to talk about now. And all this work is actually being done in really close participation and conjunction with the other departments here at ARIN. We hear you. We want to make changes that benefit you, and we want to make the best solutions made possible to make this happen. So let's go on to the next slide, please. So what I'd like to talk about today is our current status, where we currently stand, our recent updates, and our upcoming plans when it comes to RPKI. So let's go on to the next slide. So the community has been really focused on routing security. At the last two NAGNOG meetings, there's been multiple presentations made by John Kern or myself or John Sweeting on dealing with various things with either the IRR or RPKI. And we have had actually a test run where people have actually been able to say, okay, I want to play with RPKI, but I don't want to do things with the production system. We actually had a workshop where we actually sat down with people and say, okay, here's how you make RPKI work. And we did it in our OT&E environment, and we called it a row-a-thon, and it was a great success. People were able to use the system, see how it worked, see how easy it was to actually create ROAs in there. It wasn't so complicated, and actually move on. So there's been just a lot of activity in this area, and there's been a lot of focus, and I'm sure this will continue, and we're seeing that in our stats. Speaking of which, we're seeing an uptick in delegated use, and that's because they're starting to become various software providers are putting out code now that is actually making it much easier for people to use different ways of doing business than the ways that have been seen by, until recently, been able to be used by you. So there's just a lot more things going on out there. There's the 5 or 6 RPKI implementations out there now. There's various vendors that have RPKI out there. One of the things that came up at the most recent NANOG meeting is all the vendors who are supporting RPKI validation, and ISPs are actually using this and putting it into practice. So this is all a very exciting time to see this work that's gone on for us since 2012 actually coming to some fruition here. So next slide, please. So here you can see our stats, and you can see that for over the period of time since October of 2012, we've had maybe 100 or so participants actually coming in per every 6 months. But that's really jumped up recently. And that's because more people are starting to see that, hey, I really need to be involved with RPKI. I really need to start certifying my resources, and I need to create my route objects, or ROAs in this case, and I need to make this all happen. And one of the most notable things I'll put down here, or note here, is all of a sudden we went from really 1 update up-down delegated customer to 8. And that's increased, or will continue to increase, because the software is much easier to use now than it was in the past. So there's just a lot of really positive things happening in the RPKI space, and we're starting to see that through our statistics. Next slide, please. So here are the things that we've done in response to the community. One of the things that we've done is we went from basically a repository generation, changes made to your ROAs, from going once every 6 hours to every 5 minutes. So once you put in a ROA, it will be seen to the community through the repository within 5 minutes. One of the questions that came up at a recent meeting where John Kern actually mentioned this at NANOG is, why 5 minutes? And 5 minutes is the time that we felt that was reasonable to put this information out. And it wasn't too fast, and it wasn't too slow. So it just seems right. One of the other things that we did is we added RRDP to support as an alternative to rsync for repository retrieval. So RRDP, what it basically is is it's really a way of getting the repository over the HTTP transport as opposed to using rsync. And one of the things that this can do is if we wanted to go down and start making this more scalable, we can do so. And there's a lot of vendors that understand HTTP. Not as many understand rsync as doing a third-party sort of outsourced service. We also changed the default validity period for our ROAs to 825 days. It used to be up to 10 years, which after working with the system, it just seemed a bit too long. So we actually decreased it to 825 days. The other next thing that we've done is we've looked at delegated work, and based on some of the customer interactions we've had, is supporting a sort of a provisioning enhancement that allows people to start playing with up-down protocol using RFC 8183, which is an out-of-band setup for up-down protocol. What we had there previously was a pre-IETF specification but we didn't have a lot of customer demand. We only had one customer that was using it. And this allowed for people to start using more modern software based on the most recent RFC to use the new system. One of the things that we did do is that we spent a lot of time looking at the various delegated software implementations to make sure that there was good interoperability. We wanted to make sure that we didn't break existing systems out there as we upgraded from the pre-IETF spec to the IETF spec 8183. Accordingly to some of the community suggestions we've had we added the capability to list and delete rows through the API, Reg RWS, and that was added as ACSP 2018.16. And the most recent thing that we've done is we've upgraded or updated our TAL to include the HTTPS URI along the existing rsync URI. And what this allows people to do is that their validators can use the HTTPS transport across the entire spectrum. They don't have to use rsync anymore. They can use HTTPS, which is more modern. Next slide, please. Here are the things that we're looking for doing in the future. So one of the things that we're currently is underway and will be out shortly is that we've upgraded our IBM 4765s to 4767 hardware security modules, HSMs. And the reason we've done this is that the 4765 has gone end of life and is no longer supported by IBM. So we're updating to the most recent model. And as part of that, one of the things we're also doing is we're updating the interface between the HSM and the RPKI applications that ARIN supports. And when we're doing this, we're removing some of the architectural limitations that we have with the old HSM. So for example, one of the things that we have an issue with in the current system is the number of maximum CRL entries that we can have per organization. And this is an architectural limitation that we did not think about or conceive at the time that we designed the system back in 2012. But we're realizing that, hey, we need to remove this, limitation, of which we've done when we've moved to the 4767. The other thing that we've done, I'm not sure how many of you have watched a DNS root key signing ceremony for DNSSEC. We do a very similar thing within ARIN regarding our key signing ceremonies for RPKI. We have a very structured way of actually updating our keys. It includes having a MC, a master of ceremonies, includes having a witness, includes having multiple key holders that each part holds a part of the key that unlocks the high secure hardware security module. We also have a systems administrator as a part of the process. And if there's any deviation to that script, it's actually documented and stored for future events so it can be audited. We've also had third-party people actually come in and witness this. Right now, we're in a very small facility, so it's kind of hard to deal with. We'll also have COVID-19 going on right now, so we have to limit the participation with our key signing ceremonies as they stand right now. but there's, thankfully, we don't have to do them so often, but it's something that we've been working on reducing and making simplifying. The next thing that we're doing is we're doing some enhancements on notifying all the tech and routing contacts for automatic row renewals. We're making some user interface improvements with ARIN Online. I've had multiple conversations with community members on our current state of affairs with ARIN Online and their wish to make things easier and less complicated. And also there's the added work of synchronization between IRR and RPKI, both very similar systems. Why can't we synchronize the data between the two? And that's something that we're looking to do. So next slide, please. So with that, you've seen how things have grown. You've seen what we've done over the last 6 months and our future plans. So are there any questions?
Any questions for Mark, knowing that we have a few minutes?
Yes, Paul, we have a question from John Christoph with uic.edu. Are or can there be publication point server access logs made available for research?
So, Mr. Costers.
So this is one of the things that we would like to be able to have a third-party consortium actually take care of, where we can ship them the logs and they can actually vet the researchers to make sure that this data is being used in appropriate ways. This is something that is an ongoing conversation of which we need to, there has to be further work to get accomplished, but this is something we like to do. Is so that third-party researchers can see this, they can see who's actually pulling this down, who's actually using it for validation, et cetera. That's a good question. Thank you very much, John.
So Mark, just in case John has desires to get involved in that conversation, should he email info@arin.net, or is there another contact he should be reaching out to?
Oh, actually, John and I have been in conversation about this. So I kind of knew the question.
Just in case, but if somebody else was interested in being involved, not just John, who should they reach out to?
They can certainly reach out to me, or info would probably be the best place to start. And it will be shunted to me at some point.
We're going to close the queues in about 30 seconds. So let's go to our next questions.
Excellent. We have a question from Ross Tavar with Atlantic Metro. Can you elaborate on the synchronization between IRR and RPKI, and what would that look like?
So this is something that we have this community. We have these people that have been helping out John Sweeting and I with IRR in terms of what are we going to do with IRR and how is all this going to look. And one of the things that they would like to see is that ROAs actually trump things in IRR, for example. So because ROAs have a stronger sort of credibility, it's a newer sort of system that the IETF is putting out, and that they would be able to trump it. The other thing is synchronizing things. So route and route 6 objects are very similar to ROAs. So if we synchronize a ROA, maybe we want to do the same sort of thing with the route and route 6 objects in RPKI.
Okay, thank you. Next question or comment?
We have a comment from Anthony Delacruz. Much appreciated the work done so far. The tools in ARIN Online are very easy to use for RPKI.
Thank you. And our last comment goes to Kevin, it looks like.
Yes, Kevin Bloomberg with The Wire. Is there any real demand for up-down? Is that functionality slowing down other RPKI features?
So that's a really good question. So up-down, until maybe about 3-4 months ago, the software for people who wanted to play in the delegated space and use up-down, it was fairly hard to use, the software that existed. And the people who were playing in that space actually realized, boy, this is hard work. And actually hosted is much easier. So we're going to stop this delegated stuff and actually go to hosted because it's much easier to use the machinery that ARIN has created than for people to actually glue together the existing technologies at that point. There's new technology that's coming out now that is making it much easier to use delegated RPKI. I'm not saying it's perfect yet, but it's something that is coming out and people are starting to experiment with. And we're seeing that with that that the number of participants has really gone from 1 to 8. And really that one that was there previously was only halfway there. Actually, they never really finished their RPKI implementation. So it's good to see that, because that's very complicated machinery underneath. And the developers on my team are very happy to see that their work is actually being used. So we look forward to seeing more people playing with this. There's some upcoming work that I'm sure the community's already asked us to do in support of Delegated. So it's all exciting stuff. We're at the very sort of forefront of RPKI, but it's great to see adoption by the community.
Okay, the queues are closed, although Owen is just making a comment, so we'll take Owen's comment and then we'll move on to the next presentation. Please, Beverly.
Owen DeLong with Farsight Security. IRR is RPSL specification of inter-AS relationships. ROAs are strictly a claim by a prefix owner that their prefix can legitimately use a particular AS as origin, whether the AS holder agrees or not. While these are both related to routing security, they do not contain identical data, and neither is a true subset or superset of the other. As such, an override is an odd idea, in my humble opinion.
So I was very careful to talk about route and route sex objects as part of that response. There's work in the IETF that's underway, and I encourage Owen to look at it. It's called ASPA. And it's actually describes how you put in adjacencies within RPKI. So the work on dealing with, hey, who do you peer with, is actually also being mirrored within RPKI as well. And this work is underway. It's getting some traction, and we'll see what actually comes out of the IETF, and we'll go ahead and implement it if the community so desires.
Okay.